Rabbi Militsky said I should record it. First, thank you, Marla, for another outstanding program. Can't believe how you managed to get the grant and put this together. And Marla's in my house every day. She's probably in your houses too, all the time. And she's amazing. I don't get to see what Marla's doing. But I hear her voice. So thank you very much, and thank you to Rabbi Militsky and whoever else participated in this program. I was just listening to Rabbi Militsky's fascinating shir about latkes and donuts, so I have to add my own 2 cents. I didn't think about it before, but why do we want to have foods that you cook in oil? So I was thinking, because the Hanukkah candles are out of our reach. You're not supposed to derive any benefit from the candles. You're allowed to look at them, but you're not supposed to use them. You're not supposed to read by the candlelight because they're holy. So in Judaism, even though there's such a concept of things being holy, but the idea is that you have to take the holiness and bring it back down to earth. It's a reciprocal cycle. That's the Yaakov saw Sulam Mutzav Artzav Rosh Magia Shemaima. The ladder was rooted in the ground, but it went into the heavens because there's the mitzvahs that we fulfill are rooted in the physical world, but we connect the physical with the spiritual, and we have the angels that are going up, but then the same angels have to come down into the physical world. So we want to take some of that spirituality of the menorah that is unattainable and make it attainable. So we take the oil and we use it in order to bake the latkes and the sufganiyot. Okay, that said, I'm going to talk about some basic halachos. When I become in my next time around, after I finish being a rabbi, so maybe I'll become a school principal, and I have my own ideas of how a curriculum should run. So one of the things that I would like to do, if I could, is that there should be a basic course in kashrus for everybody, for men and women, because you can't have a kosher kitchen if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know the basics. Now, kashrus is very complicated. Rabbis spend a lot of time getting smicha, and they study for weeks and months, and there's all sorts of details. But there's the simple, basic facts that are not that complicated. They're easy to master. Maybe what I'll do when I retire, I'm hoping to write, maybe I'll write something, basic rules of kashrus. It could be on one page, actually. It's not so complicated, and you could post it on the refrigerator. So because how can a person be married? I told Chassanim a few times that you can't be married unless you know halachos of bishul on Shabbos. You got to learn that first. I thought, how are you going to run a kosher kitchen? The same thing for the collars. So I'm going to talk about basic halachos. This is a very educated audience, so you probably know most of it, but we'll review it. I'll go over it again. Judging from the kind of questions that I'm asked, there's confusion, even though, and I'm sure that probably when you were in school, you were taught these halachas, but as time goes on, it gets confused. There should be a text, that's the point, because if it's not written down, it's very hard, and then it gets mumble-jumbled in your head. So anyway, first, a number of scenarios that I want to talk about, and these are typical questions that I get every single day. First scenario is the person was making latkes, and they used by mistake they used a milchiga blender, and then they went and they poured. The reason why it was by mistake is because they want to eat the latkes, they want to serve it with a fleishiga meal. So they used the milchiga blender, and then they poured it into a milchiga bowl, and then they stirred it with a milchiga spoon, and then they said, "Oy vey, I wanted this to be fleishiks." So what's the status of those latkes? Can you eat those latkes with fleishiks? So what's the answer?
Well, is there any onion in there?
Oh boy, you're smart. Is there any onion? That's okay. Excellent, excellent. Let's say there's no onion.
Have the materials, the equipment been used for something like cheese?
Well, why don't you come and give this year? You know all the. Has it been used? Has it been used within 24 hours? Excellent. Okay, let's say it was used within 24 hours. So, could you use it? Could you use it for a fleshing a meal? No, not at the same time. Afterwards, okay, that's what I tell you. It's the what? Not up to frying. Yeah, that's the next question. What pan are you? Will you be able to fry it in a fleischiger pan? You see how all these ramifications. So, the answer to this question, this is like the most fundamental thing to know about kashrus, is that the reason why things are utensils, pots, pans, plates, are dairy or fleischiks or treif. What makes them dairy, fleischiks, or treif? It's because they absorb what we call tam, taste. If you cook something in a pan, it absorbs the taste of the food that you're cooking. Tam only goes into food when there's heat. It doesn't ever go, except with one exception that I'll talk about in a minute. But nothing happens if it's cold. So you could take a piece of meat or a steak and put it on a plate and look at it for 2 hours. It doesn't make the plate treif, and it doesn't make the plate flesh. So you have to rinse it off if you want to use it again for milchiks. But nothing gets absorbed. There's no tam. Tam can't get in without heat. And when we talk about heat, we're talking about what Chazal call yad soledes, which is, there's different opinions. It's at least 120 degrees. It has to be a temperature where you would be uncomfortable putting your hand into it. So if you put the oil into the frying pan and you start frying, and you put something fleischig in the milchig pan, and then you realize right away, and the oil is still not hot or it's warm, nothing happened to your frying pan. There has to be heat. It has to be yatzaletis. If there's no heat, then nothing gets transferred from the food to the plate. So you could take, so if provided everything was clean. So if the blender was clean, even though you used it 10 minutes earlier to make something dairy, and you blended it all together, and even if you used it for onions, I'll talk about onions later, but if now you're not using onions, you use it for onions, then now you just put potatoes in there. You could do whatever you want with those potatoes. You could take it out, you could put it into a milchiga pan, a fleischiga pan, you could use whatever silverware you want. Nothing happened to it if there's no heat. So that's a very simple rule. Okay, that's number one. Okay, now let's say there was heat. So now, if there is heat, so then the taste gets absorbed. So now let's say you made latkes in a dairy frying pan, and then you realized, I wanted to use these latkes for a fleischiger meal. So what's the status of the latkes made in the fleischiger, in the dairy frying pan? It's dairy. That's it. That's exactly what I wrote down here. Excellent. Dairy. That's dairy equipment. The OU, for years, people they always say to me, how come the OU stopped using DE symbol for dairy equipment? The OU never had a DE. People are all confused. The other kashrus agencies, the Chafke, the OK had a DE for years. The OU never had a DE. And the reason is because Rabbi Genak was always opposed to it, because he said it will mix people up. Because OU serves the entire Jewish population, and if you go to Calcutta or you go to Argentina, wherever you are, you can find products with OU, and you're going to start putting on DE. People are not going to know what that means and what the implications are. So he was always opposed. There's been so much pressure on us to have a DE symbol. So finally, Rabbi Genak started to relent, and it's slowly, some products are going to be DE. But what is the status of a DE product? So a DE product is, if you're allowed to eat a DE product after fleischiks, but not with fleischiks. So if you made the latkes in a milchige frying pan. You could eat your chicken and your hamburgers or whatever it is, or your steak, and then you could eat the latkes after after the fleischiks. But you can't eat it together because it was made in their equipment. Now, the truth is that's not 100% true because of the point that you made before. When did you use the frying pan for milchiks? Did you use it within 24 hours or not? So there's another principle in halacha, also basic principle. After 24 hours, whatever gets absorbed becomes irrelevant because the taste becomes foul. It's called pogum, and therefore, if you use the frying pan, you went out and you bought yourself a side of pork. I don't know why you would do that, but you went and you bought it and you put it in your frying pan and you fried it and it smelled up the whole house and everything. And then you took it out and you washed the frying pan. Don't wash it in your kosher sink, but you washed it and it's clean. You wait 24 hours and now you fry eggs there. The eggs are kosher because after 24 hours, whatever tam is in the frying pan is pogum, and it doesn't affect anything. So you'll say to me, so how come there's all these halachas about kashering? Why do you have to kasher things if they became treif? Why don't you just wait 24 hours and then you won't have to kasher it? Waiting 24 hours is called Eino Ben Yomo. It's not from the same day. As long as we're talking about kashering, I must mention the funniest misconception that people have about kashering. I don't know where this came from, but people think that one way to kasher silverware is to bury it in the ground. That is nonsense. The only thing that will happen is that your silverware might get tarnished. If you pour water on it, I don't know, maybe it'll grow, who knows. But it doesn't have anything to do, there's no such thing. I'll tell you where it did come from. It came from because it says that if you cut something cold with a hard thing that's cold, like you have a knife, and you wanted it to be parve, you cut a hard piece of cheese. So even though the knife doesn't absorb the cheese because it's cold, but some of the residue of the cheese is going to be on the knife. And in the olden days, they didn't have caustic cleaners. It was harder to clean things. So the rabbi said you could pierce the knife into the ground 10 times, into hard ground, and that will remove the film that's on the knife. That's where it came from. And so then people got confused and they thought that you could bury the knife. But in any event, so if the pan was, so I'll go back to my original question. Why do you have to kasher anything? Wait 24 hours, and what difference is it? Let's say you by mistake, you poured some milk into the chicken soup, and you made your whole house strafe. Just wait 24 hours, and then you're okay to go. So the answer is that the rabbis said that they made a gzera. They said if you can allow people to use something treif after 24 hours, then people will use it before 24 hours. They won't remember. Your husband will come home, or your father, or whoever, or your spouse, and he's going to say, when did we use this last? Did we use it? Was it 24 hours ago? Did we use it 6 o'clock or 4 o'clock? What is it today? Is it milk, inflation? So it's just going to make everything confusing. So Chazal said it is an Isser D'Rabbanan. It's a rabbinic prohibition. You can't use something that is treif, cannot be used until you kasher it. And what kashering does is it takes that tam and it gets it out of the utensil by putting it into either boiling water or certain things need fire. But even though you're not allowed to use a treifa frying pan because of this zera, this decree, but if accidentally you used it, the food doesn't become treif because the decree is on the frying pan. You made the food, you didn't realize. You took a frying pan, and it was a milchige frying pan, and you fried hamburgers in your milchige frying pan, and then you have a panic attack that I need the hamburgers for supper, and I'm having company, and it's going to be a catastrophe. So don't worry. If the frying pan wasn't used for 24 hours, so then the hamburgers are still kosher. because whatever tam is in the frying pan became pogum, off taste, and therefore it does not affect what you fried in the pan. Yes.
Does it matter what kind of pan it is, like a metal pan or aluminum or?
No, it doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter even if it's porcelain, which you can't kosher. It doesn't make a difference. Tam after 24 hours becomes pogum. It becomes sour, however you describe it, and if it doesn't affect the food, you can't use the pan intentionally. But if by mistake you used it, the food is still kosher. Yes.
I have a question. I have an air fryer, very popular now. I wanted to keep it power, but then my children didn't know that, and they made something milky in it. So every time we consider it dairy equipment now, so whatever we make in it, we won't eat with flake. Is that a correct assumption?
That's a complicated question because when it was within 24 hours, then it would be dairy equipment, and you wouldn't be able to eat flesh. The question is, what happens if you had a frying pan and you put butter in the frying pan? So now it's the dairy. And then if you would fry something else in the frying pan, you fry an egg without butter, it would be dairy equipment. You can't eat it with flakes. But let's say you waited 24 hours to use the frying pan. So if it would be treif, you're not allowed to use a treif pan without koshering it, even if you waited 24 hours. But if it's dairy, maybe you could use a dairy pan and treat it as parav after 24 hours, because because even if you make a mistake, it's not going to affect it. So that's two different opinions about that. Some say that you could, and some say that you can't. So just what is the local rabbi? I'll check with him. There is definitely room to be lenient. But you could probably what happens? There's hot air that heats it. Is that how it works?
I don't know if that's how air fryer works.
Well, there's a little bit of oil, but.
Oh, you put some oil in there.
Air fry, don't put any oil. It's some type of heating mechanism. I don't put any.
It uses very high
oil,
heat.
when I
It's
use
a
it.
mini conduction oven.
Yeah, it swirls
Yeah,
around.
mini conduction.
All right. Anyway, Ramosha Feinstein held that you could do it. That after 24 hours, if it was used for dairy, you could treat it as parav, and then whatever you cook in there could be eaten together with fleshix. Whereas before 24 hours, it can't be eaten with fleshix. Okay. Now, what happens? I'm afraid if I give you too much more information, it'll just be confusing. So let me just tell one or two more things. What happens to these hamburgers if you have this milchige pan, the latkes? You made the latkes in the milchige pan, and you made them within 24 hours. So you cannot eat those latkes. It's a dairy pan. You can't eat it with a hot dog because it's dairy equipment. You can't eat dairy equipment with fleshix. What are you allowed to warm those latkes in a fleshiga frying pan, or are you allowed to put them on a fleshiga plate? So surprisingly, you are allowed. You could do that because you're not eating it with. It's just a plate. So even though there's some time in the plate, but it's very complicated to explain. You see, the reason why it's so hard to remember these things is if you don't really study in depth, it's hard to remember the rules. It's very complicated, but that's the bottom line. Bottom line is, that's why I'm going to make my one-page sheet, but I see it'll be probably more like 20 pages and then defeats the whole purpose. But you're allowed to warm something that you warmed in. I mean, this is a normal thing in a house. Let's say you made some cauliflower and you put it in the microwave and you cooked it in a dairy bowl, and now you want to eat it with a fleshiga meal. Are you allowed to put it on a fleshiga plate? So the answer is yes. You could put it on a fleshiga plate, provided that the bowl was clean. Then you could put it on a fleshiga plate.
You still can't eat it with the fleshing meat.
You still cannot eat it with a fleshiga meal. But I'll tell you one more thing. You could reheat it in a fleischiger bowl. You cooked it initially in the milk. If there was no milk in it, it was a power of item in a dairy equipment situation. You could reheat it in a clean fleischiger bowl.
Reheat it in a fleischiger frying pan. Can you then eat it with fleischigs, or it's
No. You still that you can't fix that. But here's the next question. Let's say you made a mistake and you didn't remember what that was a milchiger frying pan, and now you already mixed together your latkes with the hamburgers or whatever, or the goulash, and it's all together. Do you have to throw it away? So the answer is no. Because even though we don't, this is what's called l'chatchila and b'di'evid in halacha. There's certain things that it's preferable not to do, but if you did it, it doesn't make it treif. So if you're not supposed, you should not be eating or let's say if you buy an OU product that's DE, and let's say breadcrumbs that are DE, and you used it to make breaded chicken, you don't have to throw away the breaded chicken, even though it has a DE, because it's not real dairy. It just has the dairy tam, and again, for complicated reasons, it's not going to make it not kosher. I realize explaining all this that the best thing to do when you have a question is to call me. Because I thought, you know what, I'm going to simplify everything. It's going to be clear. Everybody's going to understand how easy it is. And I didn't even get into onions. The one thing that absorbs cold is an onion. Or an onion or garlic, anything that's charif, something that's sharp. And it only absorbs if there's a knife cutting it. If you put an onion in a plate, it doesn't become fleischigs if it's cold. But if you cut an onion with a fleischiger knife, the onion becomes fleischigs. And you can't use that onion with something milchigs, and it's worse than DE. Or if you cut it with a milchiger knife, so you can't eat it with fleischigs. It's worse than DE because it's considered, it has a stronger status. And if you would put that onion into if it was cut with a dairy knife, you put it into a fleischiger food, you'd have to throw it away. It would be treif. And even if the knife wasn't used for 24 hours, it would also.
have to wait 6 hours?
No. You could eat the onion. The onion doesn't make you fleischigs. The onion doesn't make you fleischigs. You could eat the onion after, and you could eat the onion after fleischigs. Whereas regular DE, you could, if you made a mistake and you put the breadcrumbs in the chicken with DE, it's kosher. But if you put the onions on the chicken, it's treif, and then you have to throw it away. Yes.
Is a lemon the same thing?
A lemon is considered a davar charif. Yeah, it's the same thing. Okay.
If you have the onions with like a DE item, it's a fleishik onion with something that's DE, is that a problem?
Could you eat if
Let's say
you cut an onion with a fleischiger knife
and then you use
and-
DE breadcrumbs.
and you used it with a DE? That's an excellent question. I don't know. That's a very good question. Okay. All right. But I just want to end with a thought about Hanukkah. Everybody, you know my number, 732-236-1382. Call me whenever you want. You could call usually till 2 or 3 in the morning. Here, just a short thought about Hanukkah. Everybody asks, the most famous question about Hanukkah is, why do we celebrate 8 days? The miracle was only 7 days, because they had enough oil to burn for 1 day. There's a sefer that has 100 answers to this question. There's thousands of answers. There's so many answers to this question. It's one of the most famous questions, not only about Hanukkah, but in general. Why do we celebrate 8 days? It should only celebrate 7 days. So I think of my best material when I'm walking in the street or I'm sitting on the train. and these ideas pop into my head, even if I'm not even thinking about it. So here's what popped in, that if you wouldn't light 8 candles, if you would say the first day was no miracle, so you only would light 7 candles. So then you would say that the first day that you're lighting is not a miracle because it's the first day. You have to know that there was a first day in order to realize that the second day was a miracle. I think it's a pretty, sort of obvious kind of answer. No, it makes sense. So you have to have the first day in order to know that the second day was a miracle. And to extend the thought a little bit more, I would say, is that the idea of Hanukkah, of every day you add another candle, the Gemara says, because Ma'alim B'Kodesh, when it comes to spirituality, every day you have to go to a higher level. You have to ascend the ladder every day. So in order to go up, you got to know where you are. A person has to know their starting point. If you don't know where you are, where you're standing, then how do you know? Then tomorrow you don't know if you're different than you were today. So the first thing is you have to know the base, the bottom line. Where are you right now? And then you could go to the next level. So there has to be a candle on the first day, and that represents the fact that a person has to take stock. We learn Nitzavim and Vayelech at the end of Devarim. I once heard from Rabbi Hollander, he said that the Ruffin read is one parsha. He said, Nitzavim, and we read it always before Rosh Hashanah. So he said, Nitzavim means standing still. Vayelech is going. He says, Rosh Hashanah, you have to take stock. You have to know where you are. And then you could decide what you want to do in the future. Then Vayelech. There always has to be a Nitzavim, and then a Vayelech. So the first candle is the Nitzavim. It's where are we? Where are we holding? Where are we up to? A Jew always has to feel, I got to do more. I've got to aspire to a higher level. That's Ma'alim B'Kodesh. But you have to know what you have to have the first candle in order to have a second candle. Okay, so now when you eat the latkes, it's going to be a whole new experience, and the donuts, and I hope you won't have shilos in your kitchen because but if you do, call me. I'm happy. So this is beautiful that so many people came out. Is pre-Chanukah. It's really something that I'm so impressed. And Marla, thank you again for putting together.